Now, why should someone, so I have this guy in the chat here said, I do not support secession from the Republic. I support reform within the Republic. So why should someone support secession over trying to change the system?
Yeah. So thank you, whoever made that question. So this is the most common question or pushback that we get. They say, and I used to say the same thing for years. They say, let's just fix America. Let's fix America. Let's all unite. Let's elect some better people to Congress. And that's why I wrote this book. Let me find it here for you. The Blueprint for Liberty.
All sorts of books.
Yeah. And this is literally written for that guy. What was that guy's name?
That guy is F YouTube 10.5. So I like it. I appreciate his name.
Okay, YouTube 10.5. I wrote this book for you. Please go pick it up. It's like $10 on Amazon. You can afford it. I'm sure you have rich friends like Harlan. I mean, I'm sure you have rich friends.
I don't have rich friends. My God.
No, I meant you're the rich one. Yeah. So this book goes through. It explains in every single issue. It goes from guns to taxes to regulations to education policy, drug policy, police, everything, surveillance. It explains why every single day for the past 240 years has shown that the trend of government is to grow and almost never to shrink. Yes, there were tiny things, blips that got a tiny bit better for temporarily, but almost consistently, if you look at the line from 1776 to now, almost every single day, everything gets worse in DC. We've tried doing what he said. He said, try to reform it. Ask him, what does he mean by reform? Elect better people? We have tried as hard as we could to elect the best people to Congress and put the best judges there and the best people working in DC. Every day, we've tried as hard as we could, right? We couldn't do any more. We donate all the spare money we have to candidates for Congress. Either they don't win or they win and they become like Rubio and Ted Cruz and Dan Crenshaw, right? So they become part of the system. And again, it's very important, and I explained in this book a little bit, I don't think Dan Crenshaw is stupid or evil or unprincipled. He is the average person. Maybe he's braver than average because he was, a wounded warrior. But every person in the universe, including you and me, even the most principled people in the world, when they go to Congress, the cost of success in politics, and to be in Congress, you have to get a lot of success. The cost of success is your own integrity. I've said this a million times. I'm going to explain this in the book. Hopefully, in my dreams, one day in decades, I'll have time to write another book. It'll be a long book explaining politics. And I've realized this in years running myself. And to get success, you have to give up your own integrity. You have to do it. Some lose integrity in weeks. Some it takes a few years. But every politician in the universe always has, go back to Caesar, go back to Alexander the Great, go back to Napoleon. Everyone who gets power loses their integrity, especially in politics. At least the king doesn't have to worry about elections. When you have to worry about elections next year, you lose your integrity because you sell it out to win the next election. So even Crenshaw, who was amazing, strong, superstar, liberty conservative, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, even Rand Paul, almost every single person loses a tremendous amount of integrity. Rand Paul still supports freedom a lot, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Senator Paul. But he's also supported a lot of tyranny, right? So anyone, even you and me, and I'm the only one in the world who has the humility to admit that even I would become a typical unprincipled piece of crap politician if I were in DC. So that's the long answer to his question. Anyone who goes to DC, we've tried this for 240 years, and it's only gotten worse every single day. What is the definition of insanity? Look it up in the dictionary. It says doing the same thing every day for 240 years and expecting a different result, right? So if he can convince me that the trend that's going like this for 240 years every day is suddenly going to change because one person like the great Caroline Leavitt or Timmy Baxter is going to go to Congress and fix the world, then convince me, and I'm open to being convinced. But again, everything I've learned so far, and we're going to talk about in these articles in the books, has shown me that I was even more right than I thought. DC is even more far gone than I thought. There's zero way anyone in the world can save it. Imagine a pro-freedom conservative, bombastic, crazy outsider who's a self-made billionaire, goes to DC and becomes president. He's not bought by anyone, doesn't even care. He's crazy, has a big backbone, doesn't mind fighting. He goes to DC for president. Surely he'll fix the entire country in 4 years, right? Yeah.
No, he got totally eaten by it. Didn't do a dang thing. Well, no, I shouldn't say he didn't do a dang. Because he did do stuff that I liked, but he did not drain the swamp. He did not drain the swamp for sure.
Things kept going and or were made worse. And he did a few things that were worse than ever, like the bump stock ban and a few others. But he did a few good things as well, which I've written about. But overall, the union we live in now is roughly as bad, probably worse than it was 5 years ago, right? So Trump did not save the world. He didn't abolish the 400 federal agencies, all of which are unconstitutional. He didn't abolish any of them, right? So if we get someone like, DeSantis will save us, Kristi Noem will save us, Ted Cruz will save us, Rand Paul will save us, none of them. If Rand Paul were made president, if Thomas Massie were made president, if I were made president, I couldn't save it. Because again, the deep state, the surveillance state, Congress, the courts, the regulatory state, the civil service. You cannot fix it. There's too much in the swamp. No one in the world, not even Jesus, God, Thor, nobody can fix DC. Not even literally if you and I were president and vice president. We couldn't do it, and I admit it. I'm the only one who admits it. Everyone else says, elect me to DC and I'll fix the world. It cannot be fixed. Again, I've written like 5 books explaining now. The next book I'm going to submit in about a week explains just criminal justice. The reason why almost every issue in the universe of criminal justice, due process violations, civil asset forfeiture, police brutality, almost all of them are federal issues. They stem from DC. DC has created them. Federal doctrines, federal laws, federal court case precedents, almost every issue with just criminal justice. So if you're just an ACLU kind of person who's very focused on criminal justice, if you want to do one single thing to improve criminal justice the most, it's secession. That's what it is. And I explain that in this long 45,000 word book that's going to come out soon. So almost every issue, taxes, corona fascism, criminal justice, gun rights, obviously, almost every issue comes from DC. So yes, when we sever ties with DC, almost everything in the world that's bad, it goes away, including Sununu, who's in New Hampshire, and he's a state person, and he's bad. Yes, that being said, once we sever ties with DC, he'll become a lot better for a lot of reasons, as I explained in the book. He won't be looking to DC to higher office anymore. He won't be getting money and soft and hard coercion from federal government because we won't have any ties with them. So he will be a lot better, and he'll be a better statesman because all of our activists right now in New Hampshire who are they're splitting their time and money and resources between campaigning for DC stuff and campaigning with state stuff. All their focus will be on Concord, meaning we'll have thousands more man hours and billions more dollars a year going into liberty activism in Concord. Imagine what you could do if you had thousands more man hours a week.
Do you have any sense of how Sununu feels about the bill?
I have no idea. I don't think he's commented on it. I would be 99% sure he would be opposed to it because number one, because he's a statist and this is a pro-liberty bill. But more importantly is he wants to go to DC and be a senator and then president of the United States.
Well, so he does, but he didn't want to go to DC to be a senator right now because he didn't want to help the Republicans win, according to his statement last night.
Yeah, I don't know. It could have been that because he's a Democrat. So that's a good point. If he went to DC, he would have to kind of vote with McConnell, or he could vote with like Collins and Murkowski, which is kind of what I would expect. But he would feel some pressure, and he has no spine, so he would feel some pressure to be with McConnell, some to be with Schumer, and he would be split and have to make a hard decision. So, and he would get a lot of pushback from New Hampshire citizens. But also I think, to be honest, my first thought when he said he's not going to run for Senate, after we all were pretty sure for the last year he was going to run for Senate, my first thought was that he knows his popularity has plummeted from like 80% approval rating to like 20 or 30. Horrific.
That's what I thought too. I was like, he knows he wouldn't win given the state of where things are at right now, and he wants to bet on it next time rather than doing it this time. That was my initial thought, and everyone was like, Carlin, he would obviously win. Yeah,
every Democrat hates him because he has an R by his name. Even if he acts like a Democrat for the most part, Democrats hate everyone with an R by their name. We saw that with Bush and everyone else going back decades. The independents mostly hate him, I believe. Conservatives all hate him. I've heard on good authority, almost every single conservative in Concord, in politics, in the GOP, and activists hate him very, very, very much. So almost nobody likes him. There are like 5 people who like him, and they're his inner circle. No one outside of his inner circle likes him, put it that way. So he has almost no support on the GOP side, which is, again, there's a bit of an image there, like a facade where the emperor has no clothes. But once people realize it, it's kind of over for him. So he's kind of on a paper house or something now. People, he thinks he's popular, and there's an impression he's popular, and that's what makes him popular. But if you ask everyone who actually knows his policies, like you've talked about in your channel, how bad he is, almost nobody actually supports his policies.
Exactly. So we got a couple super chats. Nick H says, DC will force to keep New Hampshire in the Union. Be prepared. Let's talk about that one in a second. But I think
I wrote a book for you.
Well, and I have this one from Anita Stout where she didn't put it in her super chat, but I think that this is what she wanted to put in her super chat. So how will New Hampshire do better with its politicians? So if I could just kind of summarize what you just said and tell me if I've got it correct. The premise is that if we secede from DC, our local politicians, because now they would all be local, will actually be able to focus on New Hampshire rather than moving that next step up of the rung and like thinking about being a congressman or being a senator or being president, as Sununu is obviously planning to do someday. Like they'll be able to focus on our stuff here rather than what's going on in DC. Is that the answer?
Yes, and possibly the bigger reason that I think our politicians will be more pro-liberty is just the activists. We have tremendous amount of activism in New Hampshire, and all of our time and money and energy and resources right now is split all my friends are donating their money, half to DC politicians, candidates for Congress and Senate, and half to people in the state. Once DC no longer exists in our minds because we're not in the union anymore, all of that money we donate, $5 here, $10 there, knocking on doors here, millions here and there, all of our energy and focus will be on, state and local races. So imagine right now, as far as multiplying the effect of our activism, right now our activism has, let's say, a total of $1 million in donations and 17,000 hours of man hours a year. We could probably double that, because right now it's split between DC and the state. Our activists like you and me and all of us will be focused only on state policy.
Right.
So that's another reason I think there's just the pressure of New Hampshire legislators being pressured so much more by activists will have an impact. But also those who really love the empire will move. As soon as we leave the union, there will be, a year or two or some amount of years where there's a transition period. And during that period, those who hate New Hampshire, live free or die, libertarian policies, and love the union and didn't want to leave the union, those who voted no on the ballot might move to Massachusetts to be in the union, which is fine. So I think once we do leave, it's inevitable. Once we do leave, if we pass it this year or next year, and it passes on the ballot, we're leaving, I think we'll see a flood of maybe around 100 or 200,000 progressives leaving the state. And what will that do to the state? It'll make it like an 80, 90% libertarian state.
That would be amazing. Naruto says New Hampshire Congress is about to introduce a bill to ban ESG scores in banking. Glenn Beck was actually talking about this on his show yesterday. Thank you for that reminder, Naruto. But I want to go back to Nick H's question. So, what happens if we end up seceding? Would DC try to force us to stay, do you think?
Yeah, we actually wrote an article about the ESG bill last night. It's a pretty good bill, so I'll link it here. I'll send it to you. So yeah, I do discuss that in the book. If we leave, I think the basic answer is there could be 3 responses from the federal government. Once CSCR 32 or something like it passes, and there's a mandate, 3/5 of the House and Senate, 2/3 of the people voted, 67% at least voted to leave the union, it will be very hard. There's a mandate. It will be hard for the federal government to ignore that. Now, they will. The courts will say it's unconstitutional. That's fine. I'm 100% sure that'll happen. Federal court will do that. But again, New Hampshire, once we pass that, we'll be thinking, our people in the state and our politicians will be thinking, we don't care what a federal court says in another country. We don't care what the court in India say. Literally doesn't matter to us. So it's too late. We're gone. Now, the federal government's response militarily, someone said they'll use force. I totally addressed that in the book in a few chapters. The three different responses they would have is either they let us go peacefully. They're sad, but they let us go. It's a divorce. It is what it is. Or they fight us militarily. And if they fight us, the 2 options are win or lose. So either they let us go, they fight and win, or they fight and lose. If they let us go, great. If they fight and they kill us all, then we're all dead. We won't have to worry because we'll be dead. Or we'll be, subjugated.
Not ideal, but probably, a better of the 2 options, maybe.
Yeah. And then, well, the third option is that there's a military war and we win and we gain independence, like we did with Britain. But we're the underdog. Yeah, we were the underdog against Britain, the most powerful empire in existence at that time. And we were the underdog of just a few drunken 23-year-old cowboys with muskets. And we beat them, right? So, the French helped a little bit. And in this case, other countries may help us too. But they were the underdog back then, and 3% of them fought and beat the British. We're the underdog now. But this being said, obviously the war 300 years later will be a lot different. And I thought about it. First, I thought they would beat us in a war. Then I thought, what would they do? Nuke us or bomb the entire state of New Hampshire? They couldn't do that. It would be the worst PR in history of existence. Even with their media spin, it would be terrible. But also, it would kill the 30% who voted to stay in the union. Democrats, it would kill them too. It would kill people in Maine and Massachusetts, and maybe even DC if it's like a nuke type of bomb. It would kill DC, right? So they wouldn't bomb us. They would have to go targeted door to door and kill everyone. I think we all understand why they can't go door to door and kill 1.3 million people in New Hampshire, who are the most well-armed people in the world, right? Go into houses, it's not going to happen.
And I think the PR of it all, especially with social media, there would be videos posted all over social media of people showing up armed. It would be a PR disaster for them if they tried to do that.
Yes. Nowadays, when things go around the world in literally seconds, 1 or 2 seconds, people are live. Obviously, we're all live on Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube. Even if YouTube shuts it down, we have so many other open source and block decentralized types of things that blocks out the federal government tyranny. This will be around the world in around 5-10 seconds when they rolled in tanks. Meaning a few minutes later, either Russia or China, who doesn't love freedom, but they do hate the U.S. government, they would say, wait, we have a chance to fight the U.S. government. We would love a chance to fight them and support the rebels, right? So right now, what Russia is most likely doing, not officially, but what Russia is, we all know they're doing, they're helping the rebels who are fighting the Ukrainian government. Russian government hates the Ukrainian government, just like other former USSR states. So Russia will help any rebels fighting their enemies. Enemy of the enemy is my friend. So very much like that with Russia. So I don't know about China. Again, I don't trust Putin or Xi Jinping. That's not what I'm saying. But I think there is, I'm not betting on it, but there's a pretty good chance, I think, some realistic chance that if we did leave and the US military and that soldiers actually obeyed the orders to kill their own brothers and sisters, which, it'll be unfortunate, that'll be sad. But if they do, I think there's a pretty good chance within seconds, Russia would start scrambling fighter jets here as well. And then the US government wouldn't want a real bloody war. They don't want a really hot war on their soil. Hasn't happened in who knows how many years. So I don't think it's very likely. As far as war, the one likely thing that they could do that could hurt us is embargo. And we discussed that a lot. That's the one biggest question. And it is, to be fair, the most difficult question for me to answer. If they embargo us, it'll hurt our economy, obviously. We have specialization, meaning we trade with those who specialize in various products. We make products, we trade with others, and we get both products. Now, if they do an embargo, that's an act of war. So again, we're back to this. So do you think that the DC government would declare war on us for leaving them? So if your wife divorces you, would you declare war and or kill her? Well, if you do, that's more of a sign that she should leave because they're a violent psychopath, right? So I don't think they would declare war, but it's certainly a possibility that we should be prepared for at least a little bit as far as embargo. If they embargo us and blockade our ports and the Canadian border and borders with Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts, that would be a declaration of war, and it would likely become a hot war. And then we're back to where we just talked about the hot war scenario. So hopefully it's all peaceful. And I don't want DC to declare war against us. We're adults. We're getting a divorce. We can not kill each other and maybe even have some trade or alliances later down the road. But the separation should be peaceful, ideally.
All right. So I want to talk about exactly how this bill works, because it's not like my understanding, and you know more about this than I do. My understanding is that the bill, if it passed, would allow New Hampshire citizens to vote on whether or not we secede, right? So it's not like they're passing a bill for secession. They're passing a bill to allow a vote for secession. Can you explain that?
Exactly. Yeah, you just explained it perfectly. There's legislation. It's called the CACR. It stands for Constitutional Amendment Concurrent Resolution. And we have a few of these every year. They rarely pass the House and Senate. And when they go on the ballot, sometimes they pass, sometimes they don't. Two of them actually did pass on the ballot. 70% or more voted for it a few years ago. There were two pretty good amendments to the Constitution. So it would have to pass the House with 3/5 of the vote. So 60%, which is 240 reps, which is every Republican plus a few Democrats. Very, very difficult to do. And it would need 3/5 in the Senate as well, which is 60%, which 60% of 24, I believe, is 15 senators, I believe. And that's every Republican and one Democrat, I believe. So it would need 15 senators. And then it would go onto the ballot. If passed, it would be on the ballot in November, when we all go to vote in the general election of November 2022, where we do have the state elections for governor, House, and Senate, and everything else. We would have a question on the ballot, and it's very simple. It would say, should New Hampshire leave the United States and proceed as an independent nation? Currently, New Hampshire, the bill always has to explain like the current status according to law, like what the difference is, what the current thing is, and what it would do it. So it says, currently we are a state in the union. Yeah, we all know that. I would hope that people know that we're a state in the union now. And it says if we leave, if this bill passes with 67%, we will leave the union. So it's a very simple bill, very, very short. So that's all, 67%. If 2/3 vote on the ballot for it, we're gone. Seemingly, as soon as they count the votes, we are gone from the union. And then we can start some real difficult, complicated, tedious negotiating as far as leaving.